What are some recent scientific breakthroughs that aren't getting enough attention? Story 1. Earlier this month, scientists were able to successfully weld glass and metal together using ultrafast on the order of picoseconds, which are such a short unit of time that compared to it, a full second might as well be 30,000 years. Laser pulses. This hasn't been successfully done before due to the very different thermal properties of glass and metal. This is actually a pretty big breakthrough in manufacturing and could lead to stronger yet lighter materials. Story 2. Archaeologists have uncovered a site that was formed within minutes of the time the Chicxulub comet hit, proving that it really happened, pretty much as expected, and slaughtered millions of animals immediately through both fire and debris from the sky and an enormous tsunami that ripped through the North American inland sea. This is probably going to remain the find of the 21st century. That's how amazing it is. Maybe keep a very close watch on this one. There are a ton of problems already coming to light on it, and the paper isn't even out yet. It's a weird, messy situation. A lot of paleontologists have been talking about it on social media and have reservations, including ones who've been able to see the paper, which the New Yorker broke an embargo to report on. Story 3, that we have figured out how to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere, and now, very recently, how to turn it into solid flakes of carbon again. And not just under highly specific and expensive lab conditions. This process is apparently scalable. We still need to curb emissions, but this does flip the equation quite a bit regarding global warming, allowing us to put some of the toothpaste back into the tube, so to speak. Coupled with wind and solar energy, I predict this will become a major industry by mid-century, and very pure carbon, an abundant material. Story 4, it isn't just the bee colonies that are dying, it's all our insects. Recent research and predictions are saying that our insect populations, particularly that of butterflies and moths, are on track to extinction in 100 years due to pesticides and climate change. If our insects continue to decline, we will see a cascade flow into other animals, birds, etc., including our own species. Environmental scientists are saying we're at the beginning of a mass extinction event. Truly terrifying, and very little is leaking to the public via mass media or being mocked as a conspiracy theory. Story 5. There's a good chance there will be a cure for celiac disease within the next 10 years. There's currently an active and ongoing clinical trial where participants with diagnosed celiac are getting infusions that will ultimately reverse the autoimmune response a person with celiac has when they consume gluten. It's still far from complete, but we are closer than we've ever been to curing celiac disease. The clinical trial is taking place in Cleveland, Ohio. I was asked to be a part of it, but unfortunately, I just don't have the extra time. If anybody local wants more information, please message me, and I can get you in contact with one of the researchers. Story 6. One of the more recent theories in psychiatry gaining popularity, although it was acknowledged decades ago, is the role of inflammation and the immune system in mental illness. There are studies showing that in schizophrenia and other psychotic conditions, inflammation attacks the brain. Some of the damage by inflammation might be irreversible, so the hope is that early intervention could prevent chronic schizophrenia. Trials have been attempted with anti-inflammatories like fish oil, with mixed success. The role of inflammation has been extended to multiple mental illnesses, like depression, with raised inflammatory markers and other evidence being a common finding. Ultimately, mental illness is multifactorial, and the causes are often biological, psychological, and/or social. So we can't reduce something so complex and heterogeneous to just an action by the immune system. But it has gained some excitement in the field because there could be people out there, for example with schizophrenia, for whom one of the primary causes is immune system dysregulation, and researchers are racing to find a prevention. Story 7, new cancer therapy and development, causing not only the cancer, but also the metastasis to shrink. Wow, this blew up. Thanks for the positive response and the gold. I read about it in German, but it's easy to find related articles in English. I think this one explains it quite well. As mentioned, it is still in development, but shows very promising results. It combines two cancer treatment drugs, and because of the combination, the usually hard-to-fight metastasis cells respond much better to it and die. They started with breast cancer, and will eventually research this for other important cancer types. Story 8, astronomers here. Most of you have heard that the universe is expanding. Astrophysicists believe there is a relationship between the distance to faraway galaxies and how fast they are moving from us, called the Hubble constant. We use the Hubble constant for just about everything in cosmology, to be honest. This isn't crazy and has been accepted for many decades. What is crazy is, if you are paying attention, it appears the Hubble constant is different depending on what you use to measure it. Specifically, if you use the standard candle stars, Cepheids and Type Ia supernovae, to measure how fast galaxies are speeding away from us, you get approximately 73 plus minus 1 kilometers per second. If you study the earliest radiation from the universe, the cosmic microwave background, using the Planck satellite, you get 67 plus minus 1 kilometers per second. This is a lot, and both methods have a lot of confidence in that measurement with no obvious errors. To date, no one has come up with a satisfactory answer for why this might be, and in the past year or so, it's actually a bit concerning. If they truly disagree, well, it frankly means there is some new, basic physics at play. Exciting stuff. It's just so neat that whenever you think you know how the universe works, it can throw these new curveballs at you from the most unexpected places. Story 9, that the brain of a person with misophonia shows the sound processor is directly linked to the emotional response center. As somebody with misophonia, I hope the bloody stars and neurologists and ENT doctors start taking more notice of this, instead of pawning us off on psychiatrists, because most of them think we're nuts. Editing to add the link which talks about misophonia and greatly expands on my oversimplified description. I can't reply to everyone tonight, as it's 4:04 a.m. for me, and I need to sleep, but I'll do my best to reply over the next couple of days. I watched the documentary via Amazon Prime. Thank you to every single person for commenting and asking questions. This is how awareness is raised, and awareness leads to research, studies, breakthroughs, treatment, and help. So many people suffer with this condition and think they're crazy. They feel like crap when people say, "It's all in your head." No more. So from one misophoniac to another, you're not crazy, you're not alone, you're acknowledged and you're vindicated and validated. You matter. So don't be afraid to stand up and say, "Quiet, please," because it's not too much to ask. Story 10, we recently discovered single-celled organisms evolved into multi-celled organisms because of the environmental stressor of predation. I feel like this has been a mystery for so long for humanity. And when this came out, no one paid any regard to it because of all the other crazy crap going on in the world. It's important not to overstate. This manuscript performed some in-lab evolution experiments, and some of them showed that very simple features that hint at some aspects of multicellularity can be induced by the presence of a predatory organism in a specific laboratory setting. It's an interesting study, but there are many others that have shown similar effects for lots of different stimuli. The origin of multicellularity is a complex and highly controversial field of research, and this is just a cog in that wheel, not a massive field-changing discovery, as you seem to be suggesting. I work in a closely related field. Story 11, two recent studies were published regarding care of strokes outside of the 6-hour window. Up until those studies, we could only really do anything about an ischemic stroke if it happened within the last 6 hours. These two studies showed that, using various criteria, we could perform thrombectomy up to 24 hours from symptom onset with statistically significant improvement in outcome for the patient. Before, if a patient woke up with stroke symptoms, there likely wasn't a damn thing we could do. Now, we can actually attempt to clear the clot and potentially restore some function. And compared to our stroke care 10 years ago, which basically boiled down to, well, that sucks, and then not having anything to do, stroke care has made some huge strides. Story 12, there's a few companies or researchers or initiatives out there figuring out how we use captured carbon dioxide as feedstock for various chemicals, plastics, and building materials as a replacement for oil-based feedstocks. I worked for a startup that was making insulating foams for buildings, which had approximately 25% CO2 by mass. Long lifespan materials. At the moment, a lot of our climate change prevention work is around reducing CO2 produced. But this is a game changer. Instead of it being evil, it becomes a valuable commodity. Companies are incentivized to capture it rather than releasing it. Capturing CO2 from the atmosphere can become commercially viable. It's the carbon economy in reverse. Story 13, Draco by Tom Ritter. 4 PhDs at Lincoln Labs develop a broad spectrum antiviral. 100% success rates of survivability in lethal doses of all non-retroviruses, tested including but not limited to Ebola, dengue, flu, cold, and herpes. Yes, you read that right. Stands for double-stranded RNA caspase oligomerizer. It is a molecule that has two molecules bound together. The first half is a molecule which only bonds to dRNA. The second half is a molecule of DNA, which carries the code for cell apoptosis, cell self-destruction. It binds to only virally infected cells, and then the cell kills itself. It's the future. Story 14, CRISPR. If it was 1970 and someone told you that in 30 to 40 years, your entire life would be dominated in every conceivable way for the better by a computer, the most frequently used will be a mobile phone that fits in your pocket. It will have more computing power than the most expensive supercomputer of the day, by factors, and only cost a few $100, and basically everyone in the developed world will have one. Being told that the biggest shift in our society since the Industrial Revolution will be starting in about 5 to 10 years. It will be so profound that it would alter the very fabric of our society and change the way it works at a fundamental level forever. Would hearing about it once every other month, if that, at barely a topical level, really cover the gravity of the situation? CRISPR. Story 15, we are actually now at a point where we can see a cure for aging on the horizon. As in, you can get treated as a kid and have the body of a 25-year-old when you're 250. But because it's been impossible for so long, since most people didn't know what the different types of aging damage even were, despite Gilgamesh and his herb, nobody wants to fund it. This is the modern version of, if man had been meant to fly, he'd have been born with wings. Except in this case, every year we delay the research is another year more people will continue to die from age-related causes. Story 16, we may soon be able to finally predict earthquakes. Chilean professor Enrique Cordaro from University of Chile has discovered a way to predict earthquakes a month or more before they happen. It's a completely different technique from the usual measuring plate tectonics, which gives info when it's already too late. It measures the magnetic field of Earth instead. He has replicated his results in Mexico and is teaching people from Japan and various other countries, but is struggling to get all the needed equipment and keep his full research team to further refine the method. He was doing an awareness campaign on Chilean TV a few days ago because this is a big deal and could save millions in the future. Story 17. How much better electric cars are compared to ice cars. They can go fast. They can be quick. They can go over 300 miles on a single charge. They can be charged just about anywhere with charging networks that you probably just haven't noticed. But they are there. They are safer than ice cars, especially the way Tesla makes them, with a low center of gravity, huge crumple zones, and well-protected battery packs. They are more reliable with fewer moving parts and less parts in need of regular maintenance. They are cheaper over time as it costs less to recharge versus refuel, less maintenance costs, and break down less often. Fully electric car sales are only starting to grow worldwide, with a 1% to 2% market share. Story 18. Fibromyalgia syndrome has only been taken seriously by the medical community in the last few decades. Even today, sufferers are often misunderstood or told that they must be faking their symptoms or are just being lazy. Symptoms may include chronic pains of all types and levels, cognitive dysfunction, chronic fatigue, and more. Fibromyalgia can impair the sufferer's relationships, ability to work, and overall quality of life. Fibromyalgia syndrome shares many symptoms with other disorders, such as lupus, chronic fatigue, and MS. Researchers at Ohio State University's College of Medicine have recently published results that they have found a fibromyalgia biomarker. This not only validates the validity and existence of the often invisible disorder, but it could also potentially lead to a diagnostic blood test. I'd get up and dance for joy, but I have fibro and can't without risking a flare. Story 19, CAR T cells. This has been out for a while, but to me it is super exciting and offers great promise for a subset of cancer patients. In the US, there are currently 2 FDA-approved CAR Ts. Essentially, T cells, which normally fight infection in the body and help eliminate bad cells, are removed from the body of the cancer patient and engineered to specially express a receptor, which can target the cancer cells. There has been great success in using CAR Ts in hematological malignancies. See here the story of Emily Whitehead. She was sent home to die, and years later, here she is thriving. There are some drastic side effects to CAR Ts once they are infused back to patients: CRS and neurotoxicity. However, with proper management, these can be dealt with. Currently, work is focused on engineering CAR T cells for solid tumors, but there's a long way to go. Nonetheless, I remain hopeful that we can get rid of this dreaded disease. To me, any type of cure for cancer would involve the immune system, and immunoecology and immunotherapy gives me that hope. Story 20. A thorium nuclear reactor the size of a shipping container cannot be made into a bomb and does not produce radioactive waste. It can even burn old radioactive waste to get rid of some of our current stockpile for a little more energy. There is no current market for thorium, but we have tons of it because it's found in the same mines as other metals used in advanced tech. There isn't really a market for it yet, but at the current price, enough thorium to power everything you'll ever need for 100 years costs less than $1. Not just electricity, heating, transport, building your house and car, and all the products you'll ever need manufactured. And we have enough of it to power humanity for another approximately 1,000 years. Not even that recently, a small group of scientists built the first prototype that couldn't yet produce energy but proved it was possible. Over 2 years, on an extremely low budget back in the 60s, they ran it for 5 years with no hiccups. However, no one really understood the magnitude of what these guys were doing, and Nixon canceled it before a version that could produce energy was completed. Part of the reason this isn't big is it's very hard to get investment into nuclear power these days. Although very different from our current methods, it is still a controlled radioactive substance and seems very high risk. Also, the people who are working on this tech don't want a government or single company to have ownership over this machine, as they truly believe with it you can solve the world's energy crisis, and don't want that to be a chance for someone to take advantage and use it for excess profit or control. Story 21. A new quantum physics experiment just lent evidence to a mind-boggling idea that was previously limited to the realm of theory. According to the MIT Technology Review, that under the right conditions, two people can observe the same event, see two different things happen, and both be correct. The significance of this is that it refutes some important aspects of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. It is not observation that collapses the wave function. The cat is dead and alive, and the cat is dead for one person and alive for another. This means that descriptions of quantum states only have value in terms of relative states between particles, and that there's no objective quantum state. The implications of this are massive and have philosophical consequences. It means that objective reality does not exist. That reality is simply relative, and that my reality may not be your reality. Story 22. This isn't even that current, but there's a transdermal skin patch for depression called MSAM, selegiline, that is said to have significantly less side effects than other oral antidepressants and to be highly effective. The patch was underutilized because they had a patent where generic versions couldn't be made, and it was wildly expensive. The patent was supposed to be up recently, and I've been hoping someone would hop on making a generic version to be more accessible, but haven't seen anything yet. Story 23. Cold fusion is being proven and commercialized by scientists. The media is not picking up on it, likely because of its controversial history. An Italian inventor named Dr. Andrea Rossi has developed a power-generating device called the ECAT, based on LENR, low-energy nuclear reactions, more colloquially known as cold fusion. In its current form, the device has a co-op of somewhere between 50 to 60, meaning for every unit of energy that is put into the system, 50 to 60 units of power are generated, a phenomenal amount. The reaction does not produce radiation in any significant and damaging amount, has no harmful products, including no carbon emissions, does not produce any harmful waste, radioactive or otherwise, and runs on a minimal amount of fuel composed of hydrogen, nickel, and lithium. A small amount of fuel produces enormous amounts of energy. I have been following Dr. Rossi and his company Leonardo Corp. since 2011, watching them go from experimental research to having the LENR reaction independently confirmed through third-party peer review around 2014. to releasing their first commercially available units to customers in the US and other nations just 2 months ago. This is truly a revolution in the making, yet something the regular media has barely picked up, likely because of its roots in being a controversial branch of research. The implications are enormous, not only for the threat of climate change and how a power source like this could be a critical tool in dealing with it, but also for our entire economy, the lifeblood of which is cheap energy. If the world acquires a form of energy that is many times cheaper than our current sources of energy, it would have unprecedented economic benefits. We would be able to do much more with much less, and oil conflicts would cease to be a driving factor for conflict on the planet. Low-energy nuclear reactions in Dr. Rossi's ECAT produces the kind of ultra-cheap, abundant energy that would make that possible. Story 24, Hearing Loss Advancements, the Regain Project. Damage to the hair cells in the cochlea, sensorineural hearing loss, is the major cause of hearing loss acquired later in life. The assumption has long been that sensorineural hearing loss is irreversible, because once the hair cells in the cochlea become damaged, they cannot regenerate. However, recent studies in animals with hearing loss have shown that new and functioning hair cells can be generated through local treatment with a gamma secretase inhibitor and improved hearing. Story 25, Not So Recent Development. There's a topical prescription cream or gel called Retin A that is pretty much the only thing that will reverse signs of aging. Literally mountains of studies on how effective it is in preventing and reversing aging in the form of diminishing fine lines or wrinkles, improving skin's overall clarity and texture, etc. So many things, it's an absolute miracle product. Recent development on the old development. They developed a new form of the cream that is even more effective at improving your skin's look and preventing further aging. It's a consensus in the dermatological community that Retin AA plus sunscreen are the only effective forms of anti-aging products. All the random firming creams are complete bullcrap. Story 26, I've posted this as a reply to one of the comments down here, but I'll post it again because I think it's a pretty big deal in the birth control industry. I know male birth control pills are popular, but there's also another male birth control method on human trials. It's called Risug for short, which has been in development for decades in India now. There's been a recent development of an American version of it called Vassal Gel, which is based on Risug. Essentially, Risug undergoes the similar processes as a vasectomy, but instead of completely cutting the vas deferens, the tube passed through before mixing with white fluid to form the ejaculatory fluid. They insert a completely harmless synthetic polymer, which acts as a filter by denaturing, destroying cells when they get close through some hard-to-explain science involving positive and negative charges. It's way better than male pills. It's non-hormonal, and instead of continually buying more every month or so, it's a one-time 15-minute outpatient procedure. Studies on rats have also shown that it is 100% reversible. I believe they dissolve it, but I've forgotten if that's true, so I'm not completely sure. I'm really excited for this to become commercially available, but it's one of those things that seem too good to be true. Story 27, Cancer is turning out to be a metabolic disease instead of a genetic one. We've been investing billions into researching a cure in the nucleus of the cell when it's actually in the mitochondria. Specifically, the respiration of the cell is damaged. All cancers respire through the fermentation of glucose and/or glutamine. So just get rid of those fermentable fuels and the tumor can't grow. Also, all cancers can be reversed, if not cured, through a metabolic therapy treatment that includes a calorie-restricted keto diet, a drug called DAWN, and hyperbaric oxygen therapy. The prognosis of GBMs and many other cancers are pathetic. What does a 0% 5-year survival rate of GBM patients say about our current standard of care? 97% sounds a lot better, doesn't it? Story 28, a man known as the London patient was recently cured of both HIV and Hodgkin's lymphoma through a stem cell bone marrow transplant, becoming the second person in the world to be cured of the virus. The transplant donor had a rare genetic mutation of the CCR5 gene, making his cells HIV resistant. Over time, the transplant meant that the London patient's own cells were slowly replaced by these HIV-resistant cells, and he has been free of the virus and cancer for over 18 months. The reason this form of treatment is not more common is because there is a comparatively large chance that the patient's body will reject the transplant and they will die, making this more of a last resort therapy. The London patient agreed to undergo this treatment as he had advanced cancer, which was not responding to any other form of treatment. So this was effectively his last remaining option to be cured of both illnesses. Story 29. A universal treatment for cancer has been discovered, but still in testing. Basically, you can inject isotopes to some bacteria, which can be controlled by magnetism, instead of getting a full dose. Think of it as a precision laser versus a shotgun blast to the body. That way you can guide the dose to the root of the cancer at an accuracy of 95%. It is in testing in Montreal in Canada and works to cure pancreatic, lung, and brain cancer. Side effects are non-existent. All rats, monkeys, and cats tested have a recovery rate of 99.999% so far. Human testing has been positive, but we are still waiting for any side effects. In case of hereditary cancer, we also found treatment with stem cells to actually reset the bad cells to their default state. Look it up, it's brilliant. Story 30, a Canadian PhD physicist, Ned Nikolov, recently concluded a peer-reviewed study that indicates that the current greenhouse effect model we are using may be wildly inaccurate and a driven factor of other variables instead of a driver as previously thought. He used NASA data on about a dozen different planetary bodies and was able to empirically develop equations that can quantitatively and accurately calculate previous and current planetary temperatures. The big deal is going to be in 3 years or so, when he will be able to compare his calculations with independent data being collected right now from celestial bodies that were not part of the study. Story 31. This will probably get buried, but here goes. Dr. Denise Faustman of Harvard Medical School has developed a treatment for type 1 diabetes involving the administration of the BCG vaccine. Essentially, it rewires the behavior of T cells in a positive way that switches the focus of bad T cells that are attacking the beta cells off in another direction. I don't do this explanation justice. It is really interesting that this has been the first treatment for T1D other than the complicated stem cell research that seems to have hit a wall in mass real-life implementation. What is most interesting is that major diabetic organizations, JDRF and ADA, have not backed this research for reasons other than there is not enough data. Of course there isn't, it is just the beginning. There is not a lot of enthusiasm because we're all rewarded for discovering for-profit drugs, she said. Potential funders come to my lab and ask, how can we make money off this? Dr. Faustman. Edit, if I may add. All other treatments or cures require lifelong immune-suppressing drugs. To me and a lot of others, this is a serious drawback. You replace one complication with another. Story 32, antisense oligonucleotide, ASO, therapy for previously untreatable genetic conditions. Basically, strands of designer DNA or RNA that bind to the relevant mRNA of a harmful and faulty gene, preventing it being translated into the harmful or faulty protein. One has been shown to significantly reduce the CSF levels of neurotoxic protein responsible for degeneration in Huntington's disease patients, and is the first therapy aimed at addressing the cause of the disease rather than just managing symptoms until a slow death inevitably comes. Most of my understanding of it is in relation to Huntington's, but similar therapies are being developed for Parkinson's and other diseases as well. Story 33, diagnosed Parkinson's 15 years early, diagnosed TBI, movement disorders, concussion, autism, and many more with excellent accuracy in 5 minutes. More accurate than a physician, cheap, painless, reliable. Neurologists have known for approximately 100 years that eye movements can be used as a marker of brain function and dysfunction. It is why a neurological exam or a roadside sobriety test includes the follow my finger test. In the last approximately 20 years, camera and computer technology has progressed rapidly enough to make eye tracking devices cheaper and more reliable. Now, tests are coming out that can diagnose and differentiate 30-plus neurological disorders, such as Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury, concussion, autism, and many more. These tests take 3 minutes, are non-invasive, painless, cheap, and reliable. One company, Right Eye, has even developed a product that is completely automated, from data collection to diagnostic output. Imagine having a reliable neurological diagnosis of brain health from something as simple and automated as the blood pressure cuff at CVS. This is the future of modern medicine. Story 34. It's not a recent breakthrough, but recent advances in communications are bringing this discovery to public light. Water fasting is perhaps the best way for the body to heal itself from, well, any illness. A short 3-7 day water fast is probably a good idea every year for body maintenance. Longer fasts can heal even very serious diseases, from cancer to liver disease. Yes, there is a cure for cancer. There, I said it. But pharmaceutical companies would rather you keep your body damaged so that they can sell you products to treat the symptoms, never fix the core problem. They don't like losing customers, you see. So this information will always be relegated to alternative or weird and hippie slash grandma slash bogus science and smeared by legions of online PR drones. Story 35. This isn't necessarily cutting edge, but no one seems to be talking about it that much. Plant-based sulforaphane has been shown to be a powerful anti-inflammatory agent with a wide variety of health benefits. A previous commenter mentioned the role of inflammation, sometimes caused by a high sugar diet, in mental illness. Apparently, sulforaphane from broccoli sprouts has been shown to be as effective as Prozac in combating depression in mice, simply due to its anti-inflammatory properties, as well as decreasing the amount of bad bacteria in the gut. Feel free to research this for yourself, as there are many benefits to this compound. And start eating more cruciferous vegetables, which have the highest bioavailability of sulforaphane. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, screen name Found My Fitness, has been an effective communicator for this compound, so check her out as well. Story 36. I have decided that I want to respond, just for anyone who might want to hear it. I looked into it, and it seems you were correct about glucose being unnecessary. I could not, however, find anything about glutamine being unnecessary. Although glutamine may be needed, cancer does like it too. The last thing I want to say is, it would be great if we had a cure to cancer, or a way to prevent it. But it might not be as easy as people might hope to believe. Imagine telling people to take sugar out of their diet. That wouldn't go well. I wish we could have a cure to the enemy we've probably had the longest, but we will make one eventually. Story 37. At Stanford, they're developing an artificial sense of touch for prosthetics. And in Germany, they've created prosthetics that are controlled by nerves rather than muscle flexes and attached to the bone via titanium implants. Prosthetics are on the way to advancing to a point where an artificial limb could replace an organic one effectively enough to where the limb moves and feels the same or very similar to the way an organic one would. I'm currently going through school to enter this field, so hopefully someday I'll be able to work on a project that merges the technologies, and I desperately hope it can become a realistic option for everyone who would benefit. Story 38. In the very near future, HIV patients may be able to simply go in one time a month for one injection of medication. Even now, the medications are so good, it's not uncommon for a long-term patient, like myself, with 19 years under my belt, to only need one pill/day. The medication now is also so good that the virus is undetectable in the blood and cannot be transmitted as long as medication is taken as directed. New transmissions are predominantly due to infected people who are unaware of their own infection. Story 39. In the field of biotechnology, there have been some really recent tests about editing the human genome. It began a month and a half or so ago when some guy from some Asian country, I think that's where he's from, came out to the public claiming to have immunized twins of two HIV carrier parents in order to make the twins HIV resistant. As the children are still in infancy, it is hard to tell if he was bluffing or if he actually edited the genomes of these children, as I believe he did. This sparked an ethics debate and now is spurring more people to move towards the goal of it being ethical to actually edit the human genome, which could significantly improve the lifespan of humans, the life quality of humans, or even lead to designer-style babies, where the parents are allowed to pick what traits they want in a child. Story 40, Kaiser Permanente, has been working on a malaria vaccine for years and has one in human trials. Its first trial was partially successful, but the immunization burns out too quickly. With the current formula, the patient needs a booster shot every 4-5 years. The metal part is that instead of conventional injections or nasal sprays, the Kaiser mad scientists are now genetically modifying mosquitoes to inject the vaccine directly into humans during a blood meal. During the human trials, the test subjects have to sit for 10 minutes with their arm in a metal enclosure while hundreds of starved, modified mosquitoes feed on them and simultaneously inject a large dose of prototype vaccine. They are turning nature's flying, dirty needles into a vaccine for malaria.